Paper 2. Public accountability. The financial authorities and professional accountants' responsibilities. Introduction. What is governance? Governance is the process of decision making and decision implementation. Of course, in governance, one would take into account the implication of making certain decisions and implementing those decisions on his or her subjects. Governance comes to be because some persons have entrusted, responsibilities on us. And so it is very important to note that the process of governance has to do with making decisions that will affect some persons. It is a managerial process that involves making choices between alternative courses of action, and it is applicable to corporate entities, international organizations, national governments, states, or local governments. Good governance is concerned with assessment of government performance relative to the attainment of its stated goals. Government has to take or carry out an impact assessment of policies that have been made as to how it affects the people, either positively or negatively. It is a measure of the level of transparency, integrity, effectiveness, and efficiency in the application of scarce resources to satisfy the desires and aspirations of the citizens. Of course, resources are scarce and the demands are competing. And so governance encompasses the application of these scarce resources, effective utilization of these resources in order to satisfy the yearning demands of her citizens. Accountability is a key requirement of good governance. If one will be seen as, governing well, such a person is said to be accountable. So governance and accountability go hand in hand. This doesn't happen only in governmental institutions, but private and civil organizations also are expected to be accountable to those they seem to represent. The word accountability stems from the Latin word accontare, to account or to reckon. It means to give account. The concept of account giving has ancient roots in record keeping activities related to governance. Sedman 2005. Accountability refers to the process of holding persons or organizations responsible for performance as objectively as possible. It cannot exist without proper accounting practices. An absence of accounting means an absence of accountability. So as we talk about accountability, we are looking at, holding one accountable for resources that have been entrusted in that person's hand. Accountability has to do with, responsibility. Now, the nature of public accountability. By the word public, of course, we know that it has to do with the public. It has to do with the masses. It has to do with the populace. Now, public accountability, as the name implies, certain personalities have been given responsibilities. It's about relationship between the state and the citizens. The citizens have entrusted, their mandates upon the leader. And the leader is expected to show him or herself to be accountable to those who have appointed or elected him or her. And so they are meant to be answerable to their actions. The principles and concepts important to public sector accountability include transparency, fairness, integrity, and trust. Public accountability is the hallmark of modern democratic governance. A government that is not accountable to its citizens or those who have appointed them cannot be said to be democratic, rather autocratic. Decisions that are being taken by a few against the wishes of the entire public or the generality of the public, such an entity cannot be seen to be democratic. In views of APA 2014, public accountability in a democracy has three components, namely financial accountability, administrative accountability, and political accountability. Now let's take a look at one of them. Financial accountability. Financial accountability may also be referred to as budgetary accountability. It insists that all due process procedures must be followed at all times in all financial transactions. As the government collects taxes from the people, they are expected to judiciously make use of that money that has been collected as tax. And so they should be held accountable. They should be ready to give account of the utilization of that income or of that money. When they are being elected into offices, they are expected to be accountable and be ready to represent at any point in time they are called upon to do so. So financial accountability has to do with money. Money has been given and it has to be accounted for. Budget has been made, plans have been made on how to run the economy or how to run the affairs of the nation or the state or local government or in whatsoever capacity. And so there should be a kind of readiness to defend such allocations that have been given. Administrative accountability is the next one, according to that definition. It seeks to check the degree to which the administrative structure of governance functions well. From the president to those who are in positions of authority, the National Assembly, the state government, the local government, carrying out administrative activities, it is the duty of the executive arm of government to maintain critical systems of internal control that are capable of guaranteeing the proper functioning of checks and balances provided for in the Constitution and other related rules. The Constitution has been drafted in order to guide the activities of government to ensure that the activities are being streamlined in accordance with stipulated regulations. And so they are expected to administer the constitution of the geographical location which they happen to represent in a manner that represents the interest of the public. So they could be called and they should be ready at all times to give account as to how well such constitution has been represented. Political accountability. People are being elected into positions to represent the interest of the people. At times, political office holders should be ready, to face criticisms from those who appointed them. It is the way of checking whether they are actually representing the people or they are representing themselves, or they are putting their interest before the interest of the citizens which they assume to represent. Powers have been delegated to officials, elected officials, and so the interests of those who appointed them should be at the forefront. And as such, citizens have the right to reward as well as sanction those that have been appointed. Since the politicians receive reward, they should be ready to receive sanctions from those who have appointed them. Accountability occurs when citizens only vote to re-elect representatives who act in their interest, and if representatives then select policies that will help them to be re-elected. So political office holders will be held accountable periodically or at intervals. If they have done well while in office, they stand a chance or chances of being re-elected. But if they have gone otherwise, if they have represented just themselves, then they should be ready to be kicked off from the office which they currently occupy. public financial authorities. Public financial authorities are made up of the institutions which are either governmental organizations, units, departments, or administrative frameworks which either enact, implement, or enforce policies that deal with public accountabilities. So there are public offices or financial authorities that have been, instituted to take care of financial activities, to take care of resources that have been entrusted into the hands of the officers. They include departments, they include administrative frameworks, which are being enacted as laws and are being implemented to ensure that these policies are, functional. These institutions include the following: the Federal Ministry of Finance, the Budget Office of the Federation, Office of the Accountant General of the Federation, Office of the Auditor General for the Federation, the Public Accounts Committee, the Audit Alarm Committee, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Independent Corrupt Practices Commission (ICPC), the Debt Management Office, Central Bank of Nigeria, Federal Inland Revenue Service and other revenue generating agencies, Bureau of Public Procurement, Fiscal Responsibility Commission, ministries, departments, and agencies, National Assembly, the Legislature, National Judicial Commission. These are the offices or establishments or institutions that have been instituted by the government by enabling legislations to ensure that public financial accountability is actually seen to its accomplishment. Now, responsibility of public officers. Now, these offices that have been outlined or the institutions that have been reeled out to us are being manned or controlled by certain officers. Now, some of which are the accounting officers. The officials who occupy positions by way of political dispensations may not necessarily have any experience in the assigned fields. Yes, these officers may not be people who actually are acquainted with the rudiments of that particular office. I mean, the official work based on training, based on academic qualification, or based on years of experience in that particular field. They may not have such an experience, but are being called upon due to political appointment to man such offices. They are meant to be accountable for money that has been disbursed in that organization. Being called accounting officer doesn't in any way imply carrying out technical accounting work, but simply means the duty to be accountable or answerable for the use of the approved budget to deliver services delineated in the approved budget. So money that has been appropriated for a particular project or for that ministry or parastatal should be utilized in accordance with the mandate of that organization. The responsibility of the accounting officers. The first one is the preparation of the annual budget of the ministry. The annual budget of the ministry consists of plans of expected revenues and expenditure for the fiscal year. So the accounting officers should be ready to prepare such budgets for the ministry for that fiscal year, ensuring that the votes allocated are properly safeguarded. They should be handled with care, ensuring that approved revenue to be collected by the ministry or department are fully collected and duly accounted for. They should be ready at all times to give accounts of the revenue that has been collected, and all disbursements are readily documented, ensuring that all requisite books of accounts are maintained and security documents are properly secured. In essence, whenever these account books are required, they should be made ready. ensuring that expenditures are duly authorized and disbursed strictly in accordance with laid down rules and regulations. All expenditures should be duly authorized. There shouldn't be, an unauthorized disbursement of funds. All expenditures should be duly authorized by duly constituted authorities. Rendering of monthly returns of revenues and expenditures by heads and sub-heads to the Office of the Accountant General and Auditor General. For offices or agencies, parastatals that have been set up and they are a kind of revenue generating agencies, such offices should make remittances to or ensure that such returns are being made available to the Accountant General and Auditor General. Attendance to queries from the Auditor General and answerable to the Public Accounts Committee on matters relating to the allocated votes of the ministry or department. The Public Accounts Committee consists of members of the legislatures that carries out oversees the implementation of projects by the ministries. And so the accountants or the accounting officers should be ready at any time to face queries from the Auditor General and they should be answerable to the Public Account Committee on issues of finance. The functional officers, the officials who have attained their positions by way of qualification, experience, hard work, efficiency. Such officers include the Accountant General of the Federation, Auditor General for the Federation, accountants, sub-accounting officers, federal pay officers, revenue collectors and local government secretary, and so on. These are officers who have attained their positions as a result of years of schooling, educational qualification, hard work, promotion, efficiencies. Those are the officers that actually know the nitty-gritties or the in and out of the profession. And so they are termed the functional officers because they are seen functioning in accordance with their line of responsibility or line of duties based on their qualification or years of experience. Now, one of such functional officers is the Accountant General of the Federation. What are the responsibilities? They're responsible for receipt and disbursement of public funds as the custodian of public funds. All monies that are being received and disbursed, he is the custodian of those funds, controlling all government cash as Chief Treasury Manager, and ensures its proper distribution to various sub-treasuries. All various sub-treasuries are to receive disbursement from the Accountant General, being the Chief Treasury Manager of the Federation. Placing surplus funds in interest-yielding outlets or marketable security, that is the investment function of the Accountant General. Idle funds don't yield anything, and so surplus funds are to be kept in interest-yielding outlets or marketable securities so that they can yield returns. Supervising the accounts of government ministries and extra-ministerial departments, all agencies under ministries, parastatals under ministries. He is to ensure that he carries out supervision of the accounts of this establishment. He also prepares and issues financial regulations and treasury circulars. Financial regulations are like guides, are like rules and regulations guiding the disbursement of funds, as well as how finances are to be expended. He is responsible for the preparation of annual accounts and report. The annual accounts of the federal government is being prepared by the Accountant General of the Federation. Keeping the vote book and related records. preparation and disbursement of staff salaries and allowances, collecting and accounting for revenues, keeping of bank accounts and interest accounts, preparation of monthly bank reconciliation of treasury schedules, and monthly rendition of returns of revenues and expenditures. Attend to, on behalf of the accounting officers, audit and treasury queries, and preparation of ministerial estimates. The Auditor General. The responsibilities include appropriation audit. This is to ensure that funds are utilized as approved by the National Assembly. So the Auditor General carries out this responsibility to ensure that funds which have been appropriated in the appropriation bill are utilized in accordance to how it has been specified by the National Assembly. So there shouldn't be a situation where funds are utilized, without due process. Financial audit in compliance with existing laws, so as to determine whether government accounts have been satisfactorily and faithfully kept. It carries out these checks and balances to ensure that accounts have been satisfactorily and faithfully kept. Financial control audit. This is to ensure that laid down procedures are being adhered to in storekeeping, contract, and tendering. The view is that pilfering, extravagance, and waste should be prevented through financial control audit. The Auditor General is able to control activities around the storekeeping, contracts, and tendering for contracts. In a way, this has the ability or capacity of controlling extravagance, wasteful expenditure, value for money, performance audit. It carries out this performance audit to ascertain the effectiveness of government projects, government programs. It's meant to satisfy that whatsoever project is being carried out, there is value for money. This will help to ensure that extravagancy is reduced to the barest minimum. Revenue audits of government institutions. All government institutions are been audited by this office of the Auditor General. Laws and regulations. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now we want to hear a list of laws and regulations that guides public accountability, or that are specific to financial regulations. Now, Section 80, establishment of the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Section 81, authorization of expenditure from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. Section 82, authorization of expenditure in default of appropriations. 83, establishment of the Contingencies Fund. Section 84, remuneration of statutory officers. Now the list goes on and on. You can see it for yourself. All these laws are being established or are being enacted to control and regulate the expenditures as well as revenues of government or public establishments. Now let's take a look at some of these acts. The Finance Control and Management Act of 1958 as amended. The Act governs the management and operations of government funds. It also regulates the accounting system, the books of accounts to be kept, and the procedures to be followed in the preparation of accounts and financial statements. This act is meant to control the expenditures as well as the finances of government. It looks into the books of account, how it has been prepared, whether laid down procedures are being followed in the preparation of accounts, and the books of accounts are are complete. So, in the preparation of accounts and financial statement, the Finance and Control Management Act ensures that whatsoever activities is being carried out or account that has been prepared is in tandem or in consonance with the method or methodology set out in the preparation of the financial statement. Audit Act of 1956 as amended. This act covers the area of audit and accountability within the government. So this act, the Audit Act of 1956, encompasses the audit of financial statement. Anything that has to do with auditing of financial statement has been, spelled out in this act. The Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Act, ICPC of 2000. Now, the act seeks to prohibit and prescribe punishment for corrupt practices and other related offences. It establishes the punishment to be meted out to defaulters, the number of years to spend in jail for offences that have been committed, or other punishments that are to be meted out for carrying out any form of financial crime. The Debt Management Office Act of 2004, it empowers the Debt Management Office to maintain a reliable database of all loans taken or guaranteed by the federal or state government or any of their agencies. It supervises the operation of the Development Fund under the Finance Control Management Act as amended. The DMO verifies and services external debts guaranteed or directly taken by the federal government. So, the Debt Management Office takes a holistic look or view on loans, both external and internal loans. It takes a look at how well or policies that have to be or that has to be established for the efficient management of the country's debt profile. It helps to determine when to borrow and when not to borrow, who to borrow from, what circumstances should lead to the government borrowing, and also the servicing of external debts as taken by the federal government. The database also is being put in place to that effect, to take stock of all or the profile of debts that has been collected by the federal government, state or local government. Now, the Public Procurement Act is another act that is in place to look at procurement issues, look at issues that has to do with purchase of materials, purchase of items that if left in without check, the interest of the nation could be put to test. The Act establishes the Bureau of Public Procurement, whose objectives are, among other things, the harmonization of existing government policies and practices on public procurement, and ensuring probity. There should be transparency, accountability in the procurement process. So, the procurement or procuring entity has to be looked into, as well as the accounting officer's activities with regards to the procuring entity, and there has to be a keeping of account to that effect. The Fiscal Responsibility Act provides for prudent management of the nation's resources. Resources are scarce, as we know, and the demands are very, very high. And so, the Fiscal Responsibility Act wants to look at the framework that has been put in place in the management of the finances of such an organization or the nation at large, looking at the long-term economic stability, looking at medium-term, looking at the short-term stability of the country. So resources are to be managed in such a way that it is in the best interest of the nation, and it is this act that gives the the clue as to what, or the definition as to whether resources are being expended in the right direction or in the wrong direction. And so any expenditure that is not in the nation's economic interest will be penciled down, and so on. The financial regulations. When we talk about the financial regulations, we look at the guide is more of a manual that helps to guide the government, the state government, local government on what the spending is all about, on what revenue is all about. They deal with procedures to be adopted for the receipt and disbursement of public funds and how to ensure accountability. So this financial regulation is more like a manual, it's more like a book containing instructions, containing guidelines, containing rules to guide public officers in expending public resources. The role of professional accountants in ensuring financial accountability. The professional accountant has to be transparent. He should be transparent in his activities. He should be transparent in his conduct. He should be able to lay bare every information to the interested parties. The professional accountant has to exercise professional competence and due care. He should be competent enough. He should be well read. He should be ready for the job. He mustn't take jobs that he cannot do. And so he must be prepared to take the job. That is competence, the ability to do something very well. And he should exercise due care so that he doesn't infringe on the rights of anyone. The professional accountant has to exercise integrity and objectivity. He should be true to his word. He should be straightforward. He shouldn't be biased. He shouldn't be subjective. He should have integrity. He should be very, very sure. Professional accountant has to ensure the quality of financial reporting. The financial reports should have quality. It should be such that it's convincing and appealing to those who are interested parties. The duty of the profession to the general public in ensuring public accountability. The professional accountant in his practice owes a fiduciary responsibility, owes a responsibility to give reports to those interested parties or partners. Conclusion. The fight against corruption in Nigeria can be won, and the tenets of good democratic governance enshrined through enhanced public accountability. We talk about corruption. How do we fight corruption if there is no transparency? How do we fight corruption if there is no democratic governance? How do we fight corruption if those who have been entrusted with public resources are now using them to their own interest? Corruption can only be won if there is good democratic governance, and those who have been entrusted with public responsibilities or public offices are ready to give account of those resources. Economic growth and social development, which are often the budgetary objectives of government in Nigeria, can be propelled through public accountability. The institutions, policies, procedures, rules, regulations, and laws which are directed at institutionalizing public accountability in Nigeria are not lacking. Yes, there should be institutions, there should be policies, there should be manuals, there should be regulations, there should be laws, enabling legislations that could actually make public accountability a compulsory contribution from those who have been given public offices to handle. The problem lies in the deficiency in the implementation of such policies and procedures and the lack of the enforcement of laid down rules, laws, and regulations. When people are seen to be above the law, it will be very difficult to implement policies. So that becomes one of the great deficiency in regulation of financial activities. People should be ready at all times to render account of what they have done. The law should go for everyone. The regulations should be obeyed by everyone. Now, recommendation. It is recommended that in order to ensure that public officers are held accountable, or they are ready to give account of what they have done while in office, strengthen the oversight function by the legislature. The legislatures are those who make the laws, and so they should be able to carry out oversight functions of those laws. If those laws are being implemented, when bills are being presented for implementation by the executives, the legislatures should be ready to go out and see if projects that have been embedded in the budget are being implemented. Reorientation of value system, the value for money system, the value for the economy, the value for efficiency, the value for effectiveness should be looked into. There should be a kind of reorganization to ensure that the value system is at the forefront in the implementation of policies. Proper implementation of international public sector accounting standards. These standards should be embedded in the daily practice, because the standards provide a genuine guideline to ensure probity in the expenditure of public money. Strengthening of the enforcement institutions and quick dispensation of sanctions for violations. Punishment should be meted out to those who have acted unethically, those who are not ready, or those who have soiled their hands with public resources. The resources is meant for the public and not for a private individual. And so anyone who is found wanting, or who is a culprit, should be sanctioned for violating the codes that have been pulled down or penned down for efficient utilization of public resources. Thank you for listening.